The voicemail came in breathless and sharp, my daughter's voice cracking as if the air had run out around her. "Mom, people are calling. The planner says something is wrong with the venue." "What did you do?" The story you are about to hear is a work of fiction created by the Her Chains channel team, based on real-life situations to convey lessons about family, emotions, and human values. All characters and events are illustrative. I didn't answer. I stood there with the phone in my hand, listening to the silence after her voice disappeared. My name is Isla Carrington. I am 68 years old, and I have learned that panic always arrives before honesty. That call came later. What started everything happened earlier that same evening. Vivian texted me just after dinner. No greeting, no softening, just one line. "You're not invited to the wedding. It's a classy event." I read it twice. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I wanted to be sure it was real. A second message appeared before I could respond. This one wasn't from my daughter. It was from Margot Bellamy, her future mother-in-law. She reacted with a laughing emoji. Then she typed, "There's no place for failures." I stared at the screen. 68 years of work, of sacrifice, of showing up when no one else would, reduced to a joke delivered with perfect punctuation. I felt something settle in my chest. Heavy but clear. This wasn't about seating or space or class. This was about who they believed had control. I typed slowly. Understood. The 3 dots appeared immediately. I could almost hear them leaning closer to their phones. So I added the second line. "I'll cancel the classy payments too." The response was instant. Vivian wrote, "Mom, stop being dramatic." Margot sent another laughing emoji. Someone else in the family chat added, "She's bluffing." I didn't reply again. I set the phone down and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were steady. That surprised me. They kept laughing, filling the screen with noise and confidence, convinced I needed them more than they needed me. They had no idea that the message they thought I would swallow had already changed the balance between us. By the time Vivian's frantic voicemail arrived, I had made up my mind. Vivian and I grew up together, in a way. I raised her alone in Savannah after her father left, working whatever hours were available and saying yes whenever she needed something I could afford. I learned early that love, when you are the only parent, often sounds like agreement. "Mom, it's just easier if you handle it," she would say when she was younger, passing me a form, a bill, a problem. "I trust you," she added later, as an adult, whenever money was involved. At first, it felt like closeness. Then it started to feel like convenience. Tradition became the language they used to correct me. When I asked about guest lists, Vivian said, "It's just how weddings are done now." When I wasn't included in planning calls, Margot explained, "The mothers don't usually handle details. When decisions were already made, I was told. We didn't want to burden you, but the payments still came to me. I paid to keep the peace. I told myself it was temporary, that once the wedding passed, things would feel balanced again." Each time I hesitated, Vivian's tone sharpened. "Please don't make this difficult," she said once. When I asked why my name wasn't on an invitation draft, "You're overthinking," she said another time. When I noticed my seat had been moved from the family table, I stopped asking questions and started sending transfers. The first real warning came when the venue contract arrived, already signed by everyone but me. I called Vivian that night. "Why wasn't I asked?" I said. "You're on the payment," she replied. "Too quickly?" That's what matters. I remember standing in my kitchen after that call, holding the contract, trying to convince myself this was normal, that this was what support looked like at my age, that I was being included in the way that mattered. So when the text came telling me I wasn't invited, it didn't shock me. It clarified everything. I hadn't been slowly pushed out of my daughter's life. I had been repositioned, from mother to resource, from family to funding, and once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. I opened my banking app because I needed facts to keep my temper from running the room. Vivian had always said the details were handled. Margot had always said everything was tasteful. I wanted to see what those words meant when translated into numbers. The first charge was the venue deposit. My name, my account. The second was the catering retainer, followed by florals, lighting, and a planning fee that renewed every month like a subscription I had never agreed to. Each line ended the same way. Isla Carrington. I scrolled slowly. I didn't rush. I wanted to feel each confirmation land. When I reached the planner's invoice, I called the number listed, not because I needed clarification, but because I wanted to hear how casually my role had been assigned. "This is Hannah," the planner said. "Cheerful and efficient. I'm calling about the Carrington wedding." I said, "Oh, yes," she replied. "You're the account holder. Account holder. Not mother, not family. Holder. I haven't been included in any decisions," I said. There was a pause. "We were told you preferred it that way," Hannah answered carefully. "You handle the financial side." After I hung up, I called Vivian. "Why am I paying for everything I'm not allowed to touch?" I asked. She sighed. The sound she used when she wanted me to feel unreasonable. "Mom, it's just money. You always say you don't need it." "I say I don't need attention," I replied. "That's not the same thing. You're making this bigger than it is," she said. This is how weddings work. I ended the call without agreeing, which was new for me. I went back to the statements and noticed something else. Every contract, every authorization, every approval was routed through my name. Not shared. Not symbolic. Mine. That was the moment the anger sharpened into something useful. I wasn't being kept out because I didn't belong. I was being kept out because my presence came with questions they didn't want to answer. They hadn't excluded me as a guest. They had reduced me to a function, a silent one. I closed the app and set the phone face down. The math was finished. What came next would not be emotional, and it would not be loud. The family chat erupted before I could lock my screen. Messages stacked on top of one another. Fast and confident. As if speed could turn certainty into truth. Vivian typed first. "Mom, stop being dramatic." Then another line followed immediately. "You always do this when things aren't about you." Margot didn't bother with text. She sent a voice message. Her tone was polished. The way women like her speak when they believe they're being generous. "Isla, please don't embarrass us." She said, "This wedding has a certain standard. We're trying to protect Vivian from unnecessary stress." Protect. From me, someone else chimed in. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years wrote, "She's bluffing. She wouldn't risk this." Another message appeared right after. "She needs us more than we need her," Vivian called. I let it ring. She called again. When I finally answered, she didn't say hello. "Why would you say that in the group chat?" she demanded. I said exactly what I meant. I replied, "You didn't have to do it like that." She said, "You're making me look bad." "I didn't mention you." I said, "I mentioned payments." She exhaled sharply. "You always twist things," she said. "This is why people get tired of you." That line landed where it was meant to. I could hear Margot in the background, whispering, coaching. I pictured them leaning together, united in the belief that pressure would bring me back into line. "Just say you didn't mean it." Vivian said, "We can move on." I didn't answer. Silence was the only response I had left that they couldn't interrupt. The messages kept coming. Explanations, accusations, laughter disguised as reassurance. Every word was designed to make me doubt what I had seen with my own eyes and confirmed with my own name. I set the phone down and did not defend myself. I did not clarify. I did not soften the boundary to make it easier to cross. They weren't trying to understand me. They were trying to wear me down. Julian called late, his voice careful, like someone stepping onto unfamiliar ground. I had met him only a handful of times, long enough to know he preferred peace and avoided conflict. "Mrs. Carrington," he said, then corrected himself. "Isla, I hope this isn't a bad time." "It isn't." I said. "What do you need?" There was a pause. "I just wanted to clear something up. Vivian said you decided not to be involved financially anymore, that you didn't want to support the wedding." I closed my eyes. Not in pain, in recognition. "I never said that." I replied. "I've paid for everything so far." He inhaled sharply. "That's not what she told me. She said I refused." I said, keeping my voice even, "Is that what she told you?" "Yes." He answered quietly. "She said you changed your mind and didn't want to help." I pictured the way Vivian had typed so quickly in the family chat. How certain she sounded when she called me dramatic. The lie wasn't impulsive. It was rehearsed. I was never asked if I wanted to stop paying. I said, "I was told I wasn't invited." He went silent again, longer this time. When he spoke, the confidence was gone. "She said it was better if you weren't there," he admitted, "that it would cause tension." "I see," I said. "I'm sorry." He added, "I didn't know. That's the point." I told him. "You weren't supposed to." After we hung up, I sat with the truth as it rearranged itself. The disrespect hadn't been accidental. It had been managed, controlled. My absence explained in advance so no one would ask why the person paying for the wedding wasn't welcome at it. Vivian hadn't just excluded me. She had rewritten me into something smaller and easier to dismiss. A mother who refused. A woman who caused problems. A name attached to money, but not meaning. That lie did more than hurt. It clarified the stakes. This wasn't a misunderstanding that could be smoothed over with another payment or a softer tone. It was a narrative built to keep me quiet and useful at the same time. I picked up my phone again, not to respond to the family chat, but to look at the contracts once more. If they were willing to lie so easily, then the next step couldn't be emotional. It had to be structural. Hannah called mid-morning. Her voice professional, but cautious. The way people sound when they know they're stepping into family business. "Mrs. Carrington Isla," I corrected. "Thank you. I'm calling from the venue. I just need to confirm something before we proceed." "Go ahead," I said. She hesitated. "Who currently controls the wedding account I do?" I answered. "Every contract is in my name." There was a small exhale on the other end. Not relief exactly, but clarity. "Thank you for confirming." Hannah said, "Your daughter contacted us yesterday requesting changes to the authorization. She asked that future approvals go through her instead." I felt the line tighten between us. "Was that approved?" "No," Hannah said quickly. "We don't make changes without the account holder's consent. That's why I'm calling." So she tried to take control without telling me. I said, "Yes," Hannah replied. She said it would simplify things. Simplify. Another word they liked to use when they meant remove me. "I want all pending changes frozen," I said. "No upgrades, no substitutions, no adjustments of any kind." "Of course," Hannah said. "We'll place a hold immediately." "And nothing moves without my written approval," I added. "Understood," she said. After the call, Vivian texted me. "Why is the venue asking questions? I'm the account holder." I wrote back. "You didn't need to involve them." She replied, "They were already involved." I said, "You made sure of that." Her response came fast. "You're overreacting." I didn't answer. Margot tried next. She didn't bother with pleasantries. "This is unnecessary," she said. "You're creating complications." "No," I replied. "I'm preventing them." "You're putting everyone in a difficult position," she said. "I was never in an easy one," I told her. I ended the call before she could continue. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me more than anything else. The moment had passed where they could pretend I didn't know what was happening. They had been moving pieces quietly, assuming I wouldn't notice until it was too late. Now the lines were visible. The contracts were clear, and the authority they thought was symbolic turned out to be very real. I opened my email and waited for the confirmations to arrive. I didn't announce my decision. I didn't warn anyone. I opened the venue portal and followed the steps, the way I had followed instructions my entire life, carefully, completely. Hannah's email was already waiting. Per your request. She wrote, authorization can be revoked immediately. Refunds will be issued to the original account holder once processed. I replied with one sentence, proceed. The confirmation came back less than 5 minutes later. No drama, no commentary, just a clean acknowledgement that my name no longer carried obligations I hadn't agreed to. Vivian called while I was still reading the email. What did you tell them? She asked. I told them the truth. I said, you're trying to punish me. She replied, I'm removing myself. I said, there's a difference. There's a what? You didn't even talk to me first, she said, her voice sharp with disbelief. You didn't talk to me when you decided I didn't belong, I replied. She went quiet. I could hear her breathing, fast and uneven. You're really doing this, she said. I already did, I answered. Margot texted next. This is not how respectable families handle conflict, she wrote. I'm not handling conflict, I replied. I'm handling contracts. After that, there was nothing. No shouting. No last-minute compromise. The planner confirmed cancellations. The caterer acknowledged the refund timeline. The florist sent a brief note thanking me for the clarity. By the end of the afternoon, the money began returning in pieces. Not all at once, but steadily. Proof that authority doesn't need witnesses to exist. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt precise. Every step had been necessary. Every silence intentional. That evening, I set my phone face down and made myself dinner. For the first time since the wedding planning began, my name wasn't attached to anyone else's expectations. I knew the quiet wouldn't last. Silence like that never does. But whatever came next would arrive without my finances cushioning the impact. They had laughed because they thought money obeyed loyalty. Now it answered. Only to me. And I was curious to see how they would speak once it stopped responding. The unraveling didn't announce itself. It arrived in pieces. Hannah emailed first. Vendors have been notified. Future invoices will be sent to the couple. I replied with a single word, confirmed. By noon, Vivian was calling again. Her voice had changed. The sharpness was gone, replaced by strain. Why are the caterers emailing me? She asked. They need the host, I said. You're the host. She snapped. I was. I replied. Julian texted next. Isla. I just got 3 invoices. One says payment due immediately. They're yours now, I said. There must be a mistake. There isn't. I answered. Margot didn't text. She called. Her voice tight with anger she was trying to dress up as disappointment. You're doing this out of jealousy, she said. You couldn't stand being excluded. I stood it. I replied, I just stopped paying for it. You're bitter. She continued. This is embarrassing for everyone. Embarrassment passes. I said, debt doesn't. She inhaled sharply, as if she hadn't expected me to know that. By mid-afternoon, messages from extended family began appearing. Not accusations this time. Questions. What's happening with the venue? Did the date change? Why are vendors pulling out? I didn't answer any of them. That evening, a photo circulated in the group chat. Vivian and Julian standing outside the venue office, faces tight, phones in their hands. Someone had added a caption beneath it. Trying to fix a misunderstanding. There was no misunderstanding. There was a correction. I watched the messages stack up without touching the screen. The embarrassment Margot warned me about had arrived, just not where she expected it to land. It settled on the people who had assumed hosting meant controlling someone else's name. When Julian called one last time, his voice was quiet. "We didn't know it was all you," he said. "I know," I replied. After that, the phone stopped ringing. The noise moved elsewhere, to places where my silence could no longer absorb it. Edmund suggested lunch without explanation. My older brother had always done that, arrived when noise peaked, spoke when words mattered. We sat across from each other, and before I could begin, he said, "You look lighter." "I stopped carrying things that weren't mine," I replied. He nodded once. "Good." I told him what had happened, but not in the order people expect. I didn't start with the insult. I started with the contracts, the invoices, the attempted change of authorization. "That's not a mistake," Edmund said. "That's intent." "I know," I said. "I wanted to be sure." He stirred his coffee and watched the surface settle. "They mistook your patience for permission. They called it tradition." I said, "Class." He smiled, not kindly. "Class isn't fabric or flowers. It's accountability. It's paying for what you choose and standing where you belong without borrowing someone else's footing." I told him about the calls, the accusations, the way Margot tried to shame me into compliance. She said I embarrassed them. I said, "You embarrassed an illusion," he replied. "Those don't survive daylight." I admitted something then, quieter than the rest. I kept paying because I didn't want to lose my daughter. Edmund leaned back. "You don't keep children by financing disrespect. You keep them by modeling boundaries." I looked at my hands. They were steady again. "Julian said they didn't know it was all me." "They knew." Edmund said, "They just didn't expect you to stop." The waiter brought the check and placed it between us. Edmund slid it toward me, then stopped and pulled it back. "Let me," he said. "Not because you need it, because you're allowed to be a guest." I let him. That surprised us both. When we stood to leave, he said one more thing. "You don't owe explanations to people who benefit from misunderstanding you." I walked out feeling unburdened, as if something old had finally been set down. What would happen if I stopped explaining myself entirely? The first notice came from the bank, not the family. Vivian called me the moment she saw it. Her voice was thinner than I remembered, stripped of rehearsal. They flagged the wedding accounts. She said, "They're saying there are outstanding liabilities." "Yes," I replied. "They denied our loan." She continued, "We were applying together. They said we had unresolved obligations." "I know," I said. There was a pause, heavy and unguarded. "Why are invoices coming to me?" she asked. "Because hosts pay," I answered. "And you wanted to host?" Julian got on the line then. He sounded tired, not angry. "We didn't realize it was structured this way." He said, "It was clear," I replied. "Just not to you." Vivian spoke again. Slower this time. "I didn't know you were holding everything together," she said. I closed my eyes, not to steady myself, but to choose my words. "I wasn't holding it together," I said. "I was holding it up." She didn't argue. She didn't accuse. The silence that followed wasn't performative. It was understanding arriving too late to change the outcome. After the call, Margot sent one final message. It wasn't an apology. It was a reminder of disappointment. I didn't respond. Some lessons don't need acknowledgement to be complete. Later that evening, I sat alone with the quiet I had earned. I thought about the years I confused generosity with obligation and patience with consent. I learned something important through all of this. Love doesn't require self-erasure, and support is not meant to be silent suffering. Boundaries aren't punishments. They are corrections. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been expected to pay for a seat you weren't allowed to sit in, take a moment to like this. Subscribe for more stories like it, and share your thoughts in the comments. Someone else might need to hear they're allowed to stop holding things up, too. I turned my phone off after that, not in anger, in peace. The bill had come due, and for the first time, it wasn't addressed to me.